Welcome to the Wisdom That Breathes channel. Across all our platforms, we try to share wisdom which is relevant and accessible to everyone. But on this particular platform, we go deeper into some of the ancient principles found within the scriptures. If you find some of the terminology difficult or inaccessible, then go over to our Keshava Swami YouTube channel where you'll be able to find other content which is perhaps more relatable. Thank you and enjoy the wisdom that breathes.
Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Vrindavan Dham, Vrindavan Dham, Vrindavan Dham, Jaya Krishna Balaram. Jaya Vrindavan Dham, Vrindavan Dham, Vrindavan Dham, Jaya Krishna Balaram. Nithai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nithai Gaura Hari Bol. Jaya Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Nitai Gaura Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Mama Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalan Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karana Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priya Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Shri Prabhupada ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, everyone. Good morning. Thank you so much for coming. Take the permission of Maharaj before I begin to share some words. Srimad Bhagavatam. Today we're reading from Canto number 5, chapter number 1, entitled The Activities of Maharaj Priyavrata. And today we're reading from text number 19. Tvam tvam janabhang grisaroja kosha Durga shrito nirjita satsapatna Bhungshveha bhogan purushati dishtan Vimukta sangha prakritim bhajashva Tvam tvabjana bhangri saroja kosha Durga shrito nirjita satsapatna Bhungshveha bhogan purushati dishtan Vimukta sangha prakritim bhajashva Tvam tvabjana bhangri saroja kosha Durga shrito nirjita satsapatna Bhungshveha bhogan purushati dishtan Vimukta sangha prakritim bhajashva
Durga Shito Nirjita Satsapatna Bhungshveha
bhogan purushati dishtan
Vimukta sangha prakritim bhajashva
Vimukta sangha prakritim bhajashva
Janabhangri saroja kosha
Janabhangri saroja kosha
Durga shrito nirjita satsapatna
Durga shrito nirjita satsapatna
Bhungshveha bhogan purushati dishtan
Bhungshveha bhogan purushati dishtan
Vimukta sangha prakritim bhajasva
Vimukta sangha prakritim bhajasva.
Mataji's.
Tvam tvabjanabhangri saroja kosha
Tvam tvabjanabhangri saroja kosha
Durga shrito nirjita satsapatna
Durga shrito nirjita satsapatna
Bhungshveha bhogan purushati dishtan
Bhungshveha bhogan purushati dishtan
Vimukta sangha prakritim bhajasva
Vimukta sangha prakritim bhajasva.
Tvam yourself tu then Abjanabha of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose navel is like a lotus flower, Angri, feet, Saroja, lotus, Kosha, hole, Durga, the stronghold, Ashrita, taken shelter of, Nirjita, conquered, Satsapatna, the six enemies, the mind and the five senses. Bhungshva, enjoy. Iha, in this material world. Bhogan, enjoyable things. Purusha, by the Supreme Person. Atidistan, extraordinarily ordered. Vimukta, liberated. Sangha, from material association. Prakritim, constitutional position. Bhajasva, enjoy. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Lord Brahma continued, My dear Priyavrata, seek shelter inside the opening in the lotus feet of the Lord, whose navel is also like a lotus. Thus conquer the six sense organs, the mind and the knowledge-acquiring senses. Accept material enjoyment because the Lord extraordinarily has ordered you to do this. You will thus always be liberated from material association and be able to carry out the Lord's orders in your constitutional position. Purport. There are three kinds of men in this material world. Those who are trying to enjoy the senses to the utmost are called karmis. Above them are the jnanis who are trying to conquer the urges of the senses, and above them are the yogis who have already conquered the senses. None of them, however, are situated in a transcendental position. Only devotees who belong to none of the above-mentioned groups are transcendental. As explained in Bhagavad Gita 14.26, Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityetan brahmabhuyaya kalpate. One who engages in full devotional service, who does not fall down in any circumstance, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. Lord Brahma herein advises Priyavrata to remain transcendental in the fortress, not of family life, but of the lotus feet of the Lord, Abja Nabhangri Saroja. When a bumblebee enters the opening of a lotus flower and drinks its honey, it is fully protected by the petals of the lotus. The bee is undisturbed by the sunshine and other external influences. Similarly, one who always seeks shelter at the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead is protected from all dangers. It is therefore said in Srimad Bhagavatam 10.14.58, Samashritaye padapallavaplavam mahatpadam punyayasho murare bhavam budirvatsa padam param padam 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 yad vipadam natesham. For one who has taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, everything becomes easier. Indeed, even crossing the great ocean of nescience, Bhavam Buddhi, is exactly like crossing the hoof print created by a calf, Vatsapadam. For such a devotee, there is no question of remaining in a place where every step is dangerous. Our actual duty is to carry out the supreme order of the personality of Godhead. If we are fixed in our determination to carry out the supreme order of the Lord, we are always secure, regardless of where we are situated, whether in hell or in heaven. Here in the words Prakritim Bhajashva are very significant. Prakritim refers to one's constitutional position. Every living entity has the constitutional position of being an eternal servant of God. Therefore, Lord Brahma advised Priyavrata, be situated in your original position as an eternal servant of the Lord. If you carry out His orders, you will never fall, even in the midst of material enjoyment. Material enjoyment achieved by dint of one's fruitive activities differs from material enjoyment given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A devotee sometimes appears to be in a very opulent position, but he accepts that position to follow the orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, a devotee is never affected by material influences. The devotees in the Krishna consciousness movement are preaching all over the world in accordance with the order of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They have to meet many karmis, but by the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu they are unaffected by material influences. He has blessed them, as described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya 7, 129. Kabuna badibe tomar vishaya taranga punarapi etani pabemora sangha. A sincere devotee who engages in the service of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by preaching his cult all over the world will never be affected by Vishaya Taranga, material influences. On the contrary, in due course of time, he will return to the shelter of the lotus feet of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and will thus have perpetual association with him. Srila Prabhupada ki. So here, just to summarize, we are hearing the story of Priyavrata. And Priyavrata has a big decision to make on his hands, a decision that baffles pretty much every single person in this world. Should I get married or not? Apparently someone once came to Socrates and asked the very same question, should I get married? And he said, definitely. He said, if you have a very happy marriage, then you'll have a very progressive and positive life. And if it's a rocky marriage, don't worry, you'll become a philosopher like me. So one way or the other, the benefit is there. So Priyavrata is not sure whether he should take the plunge and take up family life. The requests are coming in, and he has a decision to make. And here Brahmaji is trying to convince him, and Brahmaji is winning. And he's giving him all the arguments, and in this verse he's explaining to him that don't worry, if you take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, is beautifully described by Queen Kunti. Nama pankaja nabhaya, nama pankaja maline, nama pankaja netraya, namaste pankajangraye. Krishna, his navel is like a lotus. He is garlanded with many lotus flowers. His eyes, netraya, like lotus, and his feet are also like lotuses. So Brahmaji is giving the argument that if you take shelter, it doesn't matter. You may be here or there, you are protected. The fortress is the fortress of the lotus feet of the Lord. That's what's going to protect you. So he's winning. But I don't know if you discussed this in previous days, but what came to my mind is that Brahmaji had already tried to give these arguments to someone else, some others, and they never worked. Do you remember who? The Kumaras. In the 3rd canto, 12th chapter, it's explained how Brahma is trying to create, on the order of the Supreme Lord, engineer the universe. So then he creates the 5 aspects of ignorance as a precursor to the material world coming about. And then his first progeny is described in the 12th chapter of the 3rd canto, are the 4 Kumaras. And what Brahmaji tells the 4 Kumaras is that now you are here, I order you to marry. I order you to procreate and help me in the task that the Supreme Lord has given me. And what do they say? No can do. Sometimes people ask me, I'm a manager, I've been put in a position, but nobody listens to me. I said, don't worry, it's part of tradition. Don't think that just because you're in a position, people will listen to you. Brahmaji was directly instructed by the Supreme Lord, and he had a body which was made fully of intelligence, and still that's not a guarantee that everyone's going to listen to what you have to tell them. So if you're an ISKCON manager and people are not listening to you, don't worry. It happens. So Kumara said, no, we are situated in the devotional service of the Lord. We are Vasudeva Parayana. We don't want to divert our attention in any way. No, we will not. And they disobeyed. the order of Brahmaji. And Brahmaji became so angry that who was born from the middle of his eyebrows? Lord Shiva. And then Lord Shiva said, okay, I'll procreate. And he did. And Brahmaji was like, no, your progeny is too dangerous. And then therefore later on, then Brahmaji had another 10 sons. And then even that wasn't going well. Even that was not fulfilling his task. So then later on, then after that, Svayambhuva Manu and Satarup came. And then from Svayambhuva Manu and Satarup, they had 2 sons, Uttanapad and Priyavrata, and they had 3 daughters, Akuti, Devahuti and Prashuti. And the 2 sons, Priyavrata and Uttanapad, actually Priyavrata was older. So naturally the older of the 2 sons would take up the kingdom. But Priyavrata wasn't interested. So Priyavrata went to the forest and he performed austerity. So they said, okay, no problem. If one of 2 sons becomes a sadhu, it's okay. At least there's one. Actually, even then it's not okay. His Holiness Bhakti Rasamrita Maharaj told me that once he went to Venezuela and there was a sannyasi there. And the sannyasi was explaining that he had 21 siblings. Brothers and sisters, 21. And he said, when I took sannyas, my mother cried and cried and cried. So he was asking, he said, yeah, I mean, if one becomes, he said, even then it was difficult. So he said, even then it was tough. But here, okay, 1 of 2, so they allowed Priyavrata to go to the forest and become a renunciate. And Uttanapad took up the kingdom and he ruled for many, many years. But then later on there was a problem. The Prachetas had come to the end of their rule and there was no one to take it up. So now Brahmaji came to Priyavrata. So the first thing I was asking myself when I was reading this is, why was Brahmaji successful in convincing Priyavrata to become a householder? But he was unsuccessful in convincing the Kumaras to become householders. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. I came up with a few things in my mind, philosophical speculations. I'll also be happy to hear from you. Why was he successful in convincing Priyavrata but not the Kumaras? The first lesson we could... Okay, yes, Maharaj.
Because by this time he had been practicing making these arguments.
Practice makes perfect. Yeah, he had already tried it many times and refined the art of persuasion. That definitely could be one argument. A few other things came to my mind. Another one could be that when Brahmaji came to convince Priyavrata, he didn't come alone. There was also Svayambhuva Manu there who was kind of pitching in from his side. And it's also said that when Brahmaji came, then he brought Marichi, Vasista, he brought Atreya, all these rishis. It's said that he even brought the personified Vedas with him. So there's a lesson for you. If you're trying to convince someone, then bring some backup. People often do that on emails or things. When they want to convince you, then they just start CCing like really important people into the email. It's just like, by the way, CC, okay. They say the power of a petition is in 2 things. Like in the world, when there's activism and they want to do a petition, the power is in 2 things. A petition is more powerful based on, number 1, the number of signatures, and number 2, the quality of the people who have put their name down. So if you got some big people putting their name down and you got a lot of signatures, then you got a good chance it will go through. So that's one lesson we could learn. That this time Brahmaji came with backup and therefore maybe more successful. Another argument which could be given why Brahmaji was successful with Priyavrata and not the Kumaras is because in this case the situation was more of an emergency. In the case of the Kumaras, it wasn't necessarily an emergency because nothing was happening anyway. But in the case of Priyavrata, there was a whole kingdom and there was a situation which needed to be resolved. And therefore it required, and therefore perhaps in this case there was more weight on Brahmaji's side to convince Priyavrata. Another one could be that in the case of the Kumaras maybe were not convinced that Brahma had tried all the other options. They were just the first port of call, so they said, no, try something else. Whereas in Priyavrata's situation, they had tried so many other things, but there was no one else to do it. So he was the last port of call. Perhaps another one could be that in the case of Brahma and the Kumaras, Brahma was their father. Whereas in the case of Priyavrata, Brahmaji was his grandfather. I don't know if that has a difference, but maybe the grandfather holds a different type of weight to the father, maybe. So these were some of the thoughts which came to... I don't know if anyone has any other thoughts of why Brahma was successful in convincing Priyavrata, but not the Kumaras. Anyone have any other thoughts? Okay, these were... Yes?
It was Krishna's plan.
It was Krishna's plan, yes. Yes, ultimately Krishna had a plan, yes. And I think also the Bhagavatam is very wonderful because I think in different stories very different things can happen, and both of them teach us something unique. So like say for example, in the case of Kumaras, the teaching we're learning is that the orders of one superior can be given up if one surrenders to the Supreme Lord. Then one is not bound by material responsibilities in one sense, if one has spiritually fully immersed themselves. So from the Kumaras we get that very strong teaching. But from Priyavrata's scenario we take the teaching that yes, one must make a sacrifice. One must sometimes sacrifice their own spiritual well-being in order to serve a greater purpose which is ordered by one's superiors. And that is actually the highest type of renunciation. So oftentimes opposite things may happen in Shastric stories, and when we look at the opposite things happening we feel it's a contradiction, but actually it's not. It's just a variation which is illuminating different lessons which are equally important. That's also another. Yes?
There's also a little bit of a speculation, but two things come into mind in relation to their nature. For example, the Kumaras, they were childish, they were also looking like children. So that, and also they were Brahmanical in nature, that's my speculation. Whereas with Priyavrata, he was probably a full-fledged person, and also he had this Kshatriya inclination. So therefore, the approach was also different.
Okay, yes, that could be also. They were having different natures. I don't know if there's anything mentioned about their different levels of advancement. I've not read anything on that. But there could be something there as well. So yes, like this, different things may happen. And so Brahma, he is convincing Priyavrata that yes, you should take up family life, and don't think that it will be an impediment. Don't think that it will be a block. Don't think that it's in any way going to hamper and hinder your spiritual advancement. But what you have to do is you have to take shelter. You have to surrender. You have to fully place yourself under the service and protection of the Lord. Then nothing will happen to you. Sometimes people ask, what does it mean to surrender? How do I know that I'm surrendered? And it seems that in spiritual life there's almost a progression of surrender whereby we go from an external type of surrender to an internal type of surrender. And therefore everyone is surrendering in some way, but there are deeper and deeper levels of surrender. For example, when Bhaktivinoda Thakur talks about surrender in his songs, then he quotes the famous verse, Anukulyasya sankalpa pratikulyasya varjanam rakshishyati ti vishvasho goptritve varanam tatha akmanikshepa karpanye sadvida sharanagati. So he says there are 6 items of surrender, and if you look at these 6 items of surrender, they're actually progressively deeper in their expression of one's surrender. You could say the first 2 aspects of surrender, to accept whatever is favorable and to reject whatever is unfavorable, is very much to do with the tangible actions. But then what we find later on with the later levels of surrender is they're more to do with one's consciousness and ultimately one's disposition of heart. So then later on it said that the third aspect of surrender is to recognize that Krishna is my protector, to recognize that in all situations Krishna is maintaining me. So this is a deeper type of level of surrender of the intelligence, because the intelligence, the material intelligence tells us I'm the controller and I'm the enjoyer. But the surrendered intelligence recognizes Krishna is my protector, Krishna is my maintainer. So then we go deeper from the levels of actions to the level of intelligence. One is also becoming surrendered. And then ultimately, Atmanikshepa Karpanye. Karpanye means to become very, very humble, to recognize one's complete insignificance. This is very much to do with someone's heart, someone's innermost being. And then Atmanikshepa, to surrender everything, all aspects of one's entire being to the Supreme Lord. Manasadeho geho joki chumor arpila tue padenanda kishore. So this is how surrender is going. In the beginning, it begins on an external level. We surrender to activities, we accept what is favorable lifestyle, favorable processes, favorable association. This is also surrender. And then we reject unfavorable lifestyle, process, association. And then as we do that, then our surrender becomes more and more solidified. Even within our intelligence, we understand that, yes, I'm not just practicing Krishna consciousness externally, but I'm beginning to understand that without Krishna, without Krishna's protection, I have no standing in this world. And as one becomes more and more convinced of that, then what happens is one surrenders in their heart. They realize, wow, Krishna, He's done everything for me, and therefore I should give everything to Him. And like this, surrender goes on deeper and deeper levels. You could also see this in the Bhagavad Gita in terms of Arjuna's surrender to Krishna. Because at different points in the Bhagavad Gita, the point of surrender comes up. Perhaps the first point of surrender of Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita is when he tells Krishna, Shishyasteham sadhimam tvam prapannam. So this word, prapannam, I surrender unto you and become your disciple. I'm ready to hear from you. So this is Arjuna's first level of surrender, that actually he's open to hearing, he's open to learning, he's open to changing his vision. He surrendered to a teacher to try and learn something. So this is the first step of surrender. And then later on, as the Bhagavad Gita progresses, then Krishna is teaching Arjuna about the nature of the world, the nature of his existence. And then in the 7th chapter, for example, Krishna says, Devi hiya shagunamai mama maya duratyaya mamevaye prapadyante. So again, this word surrender comes. And here Krishna tells Arjuna that if you want to get out of the complexity of the world, then you don't just have to hear from me, you have to surrender your activities to me. And then if you do that, maya me tam taranti te. So in the beginning, Arjun surrenders to hearing from Krishna. And then here, what Arjun does is he begins to surrender to the process of actually dedicating everything to Krishna. And there he realizes on Krishna's instruction and wisdom that if he does that, he'll go beyond the influence of the world. But then later on in the Gita, there's a heartfelt type of surrender. Like in the 18th chapter, Tvameva saranam gacha sarva bhavena bharata. Sarva bhavena bharata. Surrender unto me entirely with your bhav, with your full heartfelt willingness. Krishna says, Aham tvam sarva dharmam parityaja mamekam. So now Krishna is saying, surrender not just your hearing process and your intelligence to new ideas, surrender not just your activities in a process, but surrender entirely unto me in your heart. This is an even deeper type of surrender. So like this, Priyavrata is being instructed by Brahmaji that if you become surrendered, if you take shelter, Shishi Jagannath Baladev Subhadra ki, Shishi Gauranitai ki. If you become completely surrendered, then family life and complexities of family life won't affect you anymore. And when we think of surrender, we can understand that this surrender is progressive. It has to begin externally by surrendering to the process, but then it matures internally by actually being completely aligned with Krishna's will. It's said that we only have one thing that Krishna never takes away, and that's our free will. So when we completely align our free will with Krishna's will, then we can understand that is the ultimate type of surrender. Therefore, vraja, the word vraja has different connotations, but one is that it means to move. Vraja means to move. And one explanation is given by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur in Amritavani. He says that Vraja, or the residents of Vrindavan, the Brajabasis, the reason they call Brajabasis is because they are always moving with Krishna. Krishna walks, and we don't know where Krishna is going to go. We don't know what Krishna's will is going to be. We don't know what next adventures Krishna will send us on. But the Brajabasis are always walking with Krishna. They're fearless, they're flexible, they're fully available for wherever Krishna wants to take them. And in that sense, Vraja is the place of surrender, because there the residents are entirely aligned with Krishna. And that perhaps is the highest level of surrender that we're trying to get to. So, therefore, one need not worry. Grihe thako, vane thako, sada hari bole dako. Whether you're living in household life, whether you're in the forest, it doesn't matter. Surrender unto Krishna. Chant his names, follow the process, and the effects of the modes of nature will not go upon you. One final thing I'll just comment on, because Srila Prabhupada quotes it in this verse, and I can ask you for your ideas on this. At the end of the purport, Srila Prabhupada quotes the verse that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spoke to the Kurma Brahmana. The Kurma Brahmana, Brahmaji is telling Priyavrata to go into family life. The Kurma Brahmana had gone into family life. And when Mahaprabhu came, then the Kurma Brahmana said to Mahaprabhu, I cannot tolerate the waves of family life anymore. I want to leave. So at that point, Mahaprabhu told the Kurma Brahmana the very famous verse that Prabhupada quoted again and again. Jare dekha tare kaha Krishna upadesh amara agyaya guru hanatare e desh. Mahaprabhu told them that the waves of family life, material life is affecting you. I'll give you the solution. Everyone you meet, everyone you see, tell them about Krishna. And Mahaprabhu says, Kabuna bhadibe tomar vishaya taranga punarapi thani pabe mora sangha. If you follow this instruction of mine to tell everyone you meet about Krishna, then the waves of family life will affect you no more. So again, when I read that first time, I was like, what's the connection there? I mean, imagine if someone comes to you with all their problems of, I got a mortgage, I got family problems, I got this, and you look at them and you say, everyone you meet, everyone you see, just tell them about Krishna. And these waves of family life will no longer affect you. It's an interesting response. Like now we have like mentorship systems, and so like a mentor could get reported for giving advice like that. Like, why are you giving such transcendental advice? You should help practically. So why do you think Mahaprabhu told the Kurma Brahmana who was experiencing the waves of family life to be an incredibly difficult thing to overcome? Why did he tell him, as the solution, whoever you meet, just tell him about Krishna? Why is that going to solve, and how is that going to solve his problems? Is it going to solve his problems?
Yes.
Why? How?
Because,
Yes.
family life will lose their importance.
Okay. You're saying it will lose its importance,
Yes.
family life. In what sense?
Because his conscious is on another level.
Okay, so you're saying this absorption in sharing Krishna with others will take his absorption to another place.
Yes.
And therefore all the problems, so some problems you can't solve. Some problems, all you have to do is switch your absorption to another place, and then they become insignificant.
Yes.
Is that? Okay, good. Yeah, that could definitely be one way, that preaching is one of the most absorbing activities. Sharing Krishna with others is one of the most absorbing activities, and it has the power to take your absorption away from all of your problems. And so that could definitely be one. When I was doing this once, His Holiness Jai Advaita Maharaj was sitting there. So I asked this question to the audience, and Maharaj put his hand up. And he said, I know why this will solve the problems. I said, yes, Maharaj, please tell us. He said, because he'll be out of the house preaching all the time. He won't be at home. There won't be any time to have any arguments. Yes, Maharaj.
Well, if he's speaking about Krishna to everyone that he meets, he may eventually meet someone who is very wealthy. Will be inspired by his preaching and will help him to pay his mortgage.
Stranger things have happened. Yes, definitely. Yes.
So if Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is telling this Kurma Brahmana to tell anyone that he sees and meets about Krishna, doesn't that also include his family? Because
Okay, well, it could be. That's a good one.
then there would be some common ground, right? That hey, we're all Krishna, we're going to serve Krishna.
Yeah. Like they say that the family that dances together advances together. The family that sings together clings together. And there are some others that I can't remember right now. But yeah,
The family that
prays together, stays together. Yeah. So Jadade Katare Kaha Krishna Upadesh doesn't mean only preach to the whole world, but preach to each other, talk to each other about Krishna, and maybe you'll find that when you talk to each other about Krishna, then you actually elevate your consciousness beyond the problems and the petty arguments of material life. Yes.
Yeah, I think it also has to do with just learning to forget about one's own little problems, but
Yeah.
by helping others actually and develops compassion, and then the old problem also becomes solved in a way.
Yeah, it's like expanding your consciousness. Yeah.
Just received we get a daily quote from my Guru Maharaj, His Holiness Bhakti Swarup Damodar Maharaj, and he says, which just fits, the spirit of a Vaishnava is that he is not worried about his or her own advancement, but is always concerned about the well-being of others.
Yeah.
Of that spirit.
Yeah. So as you broaden your horizon, so like Mahaprabhu said in Chaitanya Mangala, it said that he gave up the small world of family life to embrace the whole world as his family. And so in one sense, that's not just what you do when you take sannyas. In one sense, every Krishna conscious householder does that. They're not just living in the small world of family life, they're embracing the whole world as their family. The Krishna conscious householder, before they take a meal, they should go to the door and say, is anyone hungry? Is anyone hungry? Is anyone hungry? And just by that broad-mindedness and expansion of one's consciousness, one sees everything in a broader vision. Thank you. Nice. Yes?
What comes to mind is that in order to be able to speak about Krishna, we need to hear about Krishna.
Okay.
Immerse ourselves in Shastra, and there, consciousness is elevated, and we're also getting some practical advice on also Grihastha life.
Yeah, so if you have to tell everyone you meet about Krishna, then you have to have something to say. You have to have some realization. You feel that very much, like when you become a traveling preacher and, wherever you go, they just put a mic in front of you. It's like, okay. Not a day goes by where you're not speaking about Krishna, which is beautiful, it's wonderful. But then we realize, I must hear about Krishna, I must have some genuine realization about Krishna, otherwise how can I continue speaking about Krishna? It becomes almost very mechanical, so one must have some realization to share. Thank you. Yes?
As is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, one who preaches becomes dearmost to Krishna, and then everything in life becomes almost precious.
Yes, Krishna says, Nachatasman manusheshu kashkin me priyakritama, that what you get one vital ingredient when you share Krishna consciousness with others, which is you become very dear to Krishna and you are invested with mercy. Perhaps the only way we will overcome our problems in this world are only if we get mercy. And where is perhaps the greatest and one of the most powerful places from which to draw mercy? The space in which you are trying to share mercy with others. And therefore, by going and telling the Brahmana, go and tell everyone about Krishna, help them, then Mahaprabhu knew that he would become very blessed, and those blessings would carry him through whatever difficulty. Yes?
When you are meeting many people, you see they have bigger problem in their life. And then you see...
Yeah. It ain't that bad.
Then you feel like, my problems are petty problems.
Yeah.
No one has bigger problems.
Yeah, it's like that. There's a story that a king, he said, I'm opening up an exhibition and I want everyone to display all their problems, because everyone was complaining, I've got so many problems. So he said, I want you to open a gallery and I want you to display all your problems. So they came and they displayed all their problems, and they were now looking at each other's problems, having a good, good time. Bhaktivinoda says, I become happy on seeing someone else's problems. And so they were all and then they were all walking out, and the king said, no, hang on, where are you all going? They said, we've seen everyone's problems, we're out of here. He goes, no, I got a gallery full of problems here. All of you have to take one set of problems back with you. You can decide which set you want to take. So they were looking at everyone else's problems, but in a different mindset. Like, I got to take these problems. So they're like, this person's problem not so bad, but they got that thing. No, don't leave that one. And this person, no, it seems okay, but there's this thing. Oh, no, I don't want to deal with that. Everyone looked at everyone else's problems and said, you know what? I take my own problems and get out of here. Because we have this notion and feeling that my problems are the worst, my life is the hardest, my obstacles are insurmountable, oh no, why am I? But when you go out and you share Krishna consciousness and you realize how much struggle there is in the material world, how much people have to go through. It's funny not funny, but it's interesting on book distribution that because people meet you for the first time and they're like, I'm never going to meet you again probably in my whole life. They're very open, you know. People tell you things on the street. They're very honest. And I'm like, are you sure you want to tell me all of this? Like, yeah, I want to talk. Okay, let's talk. And people are very open and they reveal so much about their life, what they're going through, and you realize, man, it's not so bad. With all my problems, I have a process. I have a way out. At least I know what I need to do to find some peace of mind. And then you realize it's not so bad. So yes, it gives us realization. So it's very interesting. This is why Shastra is so beautiful, and this is why Sangha is so powerful, because it almost seems like Mahaprabhu just makes a very, very transcendental statement, and it's like, okay, yeah, but we need some practical solutions here. That can sometimes be the response. But it's very, very scientific, the instructions of Shastra and how they protect us and how they mold our life in a very beautiful way. So here, just as Mahaprabhu told Kurma Brahmana, you don't need to worry. Family life doesn't have to be an impediment. Brahmaji is telling Priyavrata, don't worry, just take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. You'll be protected. Nothing can impede you, because the Lord will always be with you. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. I don't know if there are any comments, questions. Yes, Maharaj, please. Is there a mic?
Thank you, Maharaj. All very stimulating. You were speaking about Sharanagati, as Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur presents. And correct me if I'm wrong, but as I remember, in his Sharanagati songbook, he starts at the end and goes to the beginning. So he doesn't start with Anukulyasa Sankalpa. He starts with Atma Nivedana. And I always wondered about that. How because as you said, it's going more from external to internal. But he reverses it in his songbook. Or maybe it was later his editor put it that way. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
So to respond to one Acharya's exposition of something with another modern day Acharya called what's his name? Start with Y? That book, Start with Y?
Oh, Simon Sinek.
Simon Sinek. So I'll answer it with the modern day Acharya. So Simon Sinek writes a book called Start with Why. And he says in life there are three questions: why, how, and what. And what most of the people in the world do is they focus on the how and the what without understanding their why. In other words, he says you have to start with the prayojana. Of course, he doesn't say that. You have to start with the goal. You have to start understanding what your destination is. Because that becomes not just an orientation, but that becomes an inspiration. And so when one has become sufficiently inspired and orientated towards their ultimate goal, then embracing and understanding the steps on that journey becomes much easier. And therefore he says that if you're wise, then what you'll do in your life is you'll start with why. You'll clarify what your goal is, what your purpose is, what your prayojana is. Because if you do that, then it will be much easier to walk that journey. So perhaps that could be one way to see it. That sometimes we start with the goal because it helps us to inspire ourselves and orientate ourselves to embrace the other things that are necessary on that journey. I guess that could be one way.
Yeah, that's a good point. And he does come back to prayojana. He does come back to prayojana, at least in the edition I've seen. After the 6 points of surrender, then there are several songs about Harinam, and it culminates in this sort of super intense prayojana description. So, yes,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
It's also interesting, the strategy of Shastra. Like, say, for example, if you look at the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam, they both actually do this. Because if you look at the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, then right at the beginning, that chapter is entitled Contents of the Gita Summarized. So what Krishna almost does right in the beginning is he tells Arjuna everything very quickly. And then Arjuna says, "Look, whoa, hang on, I got some questions here." And then in the third chapter he starts asking his questions, and then Krishna again systematically goes through it. So Krishna says what it is. Sometimes they say in public speaking it's like that. They say, tell people what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you just told them. That's actually, they say in the world, that's how you do public speaking. And if you look at the Bhagavatam, it's actually very similar, because in the second canto, which is where the conversation of Sukadeva and Parikshit takes place, then Parikshit obviously asks his question. And then one commentator, he says that, I think it's Sridhar Swami, he says that Sukadev Goswami is so enthusiastic to respond to Parikshit's question that he forgets to do a Mangalacharan. He almost just launches into, from the first chapter of the second canto, he launches into all of these topics, and within the first 3 chapters of the second canto, he ultimately culminates in pure devotional service, the change in heart. And then in the 4th chapter, he comes back and he offers prayers, Mangalacharan, and then he continues again. So again, you could say in the first 3 chapters of the second canto, the essence has already been given. But then what Sukadev does in his conversation with Parikshit is he further unpacks it. So it seems like that is sometimes a strategy that is taken in Shastra, whereby the essence is given very early on in a very concentrated format, and then later on is unpacked in a culmination back towards that essence again. Some thoughts? Anyone else have any questions? Yes?
Just trying to... So this is just trying to understand the logistics of creation. So Lord Brahma is there, and at that point now the 4 Kumaras are created somehow, and then there's the Manus and so on and so on. So the 2 kind of trains of thought, one is there's tons of living entities, and based off our karma, at one point we get pulled into Vishnu, we're non-existent, and then when we come back, we will be reinstated to whatever previous consciousness was. But it seems like in this particular scenario that it's more linear, that there's one being and another being, and then so on and so on, and then slowly like creation happens. And then the other idea is that it seems like the domain is the earthly planets again, but we also understand that there's high planetary systems and lower planetary systems. So where does this whole like other pieces kind of fit in? Because if we zoom out, there's more to things.
Yeah. Here we are in Zurich. This small person on a small seat trying to figure out the entirety of the cosmos. I guess in response to your first question, yes, the creation of the species, and as is described in the Bhagavatam, Atra Sargo Visargascha, it is somewhat linear. There's a process to it. But remember, we understand that those souls are all existing. They're just introduced into the bodies once the body and the situation is appropriate. So the way the Lord creates the world is that there are planetary systems, there are then species, and there are also ages. And the combination of the planetary systems, the species, and different ages, that creates every conceivable type of variation required to introduce the souls into this world for the ideal situation that they need to experience. So yeah, although the creation of the material bodies of species seems somewhat linear, we understand that the souls are always existing, are just introduced into those species at a relevant time to continue on their journey, like that. And then your second question about how does creation take place in other planetary systems? Yes, we don't hear, the Bhagavatam doesn't really deal with that level of detail, like on every planetary system. Of course, it talks about the species, the types of situations. We know that the 5th canto contains, Sthanam is focused on the planetary systems, and we understand what kind of situations of life there are in different realms, but the details of how that comes about in all the different planets. Of course, we understand there are Bhagavatams which are of different lengths and different details, and there are Bhagavatams on heavenly planets which are much, much more vast than the Srimad Bhagavatam that we're reading here. So perhaps you may have to go to the heavenly planets and buy a Bhagavatam set there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Putting the focus back to practical and transcendental instructions. I remember Kadam Khan Maharaj tell this story that while he was in a Sankirtan early days, and it was minus temperature, and one of the Sankirtan leader, he hit his finger, and it's literally hurting him like anything. And he says, "Prabhu, you're not the body, you're the soul." And he was like, I couldn't take it. And he was like, that was the last day I went to Sankirtan and I left. And then of course he comes back. So I'm just wondering if you can add some rider to it, that when do we say transcendental instructions? And
yeah, it's interesting. Would you do it if someone came to you and said, I've got all these family problems, I've got so many difficulties? Would we say that? Whoever you see, whoever you meet, just tell them about Krishna. The first thing is, what we often communicate in our advice is not simply our words, but it's our realization. And often we say, don't preach beyond your realization. So oftentimes when we give very transcendental instructions to people, it's not coming from a place of realization. It's coming from a place of maybe immaturity. And therefore it doesn't penetrate those individuals in the same way. But when one actually has genuine realization of what they're saying, they've experienced it in their life, and they say it with that realization, then it has a different impact. And therefore one must always try to... they say you can't take the world to a higher place than what you've reached internally yourself. So is that person who told the person who banged his finger, like, you're not the body, if tomorrow his finger would be, would he have the same realization in that moment? That's a good question to sometimes ask. So that's one thing. I think the second thing is sometimes it doesn't have to be either or. Either I give a transcendental instruction or I give a practical instruction. But why can't you give a transcendental instruction and then give someone the practical steps to walk towards it? Because what we often do is we go off when we're advising people, we go off the road on one of the extremes. Either we give them a very transcendental instruction that's so beyond their level of realization that they can't do anything with it, or we give people such a practical piece of advice but doesn't really give any transcendental dimension and advancement and evolution towards, transcendental consciousness. So therefore, it needs both, the practical and the transcendental. Like, I'll give you two options. Option A, would you like to go to a hospital? Option A, you can go to a hospital where it's full of nurses, but there's no doctors. Option B, you can go to a hospital which is full of doctors, but no nurses. Which one do you want to go to?
I'll stay at home.
Because if you go to the option B, the one where there's only doctors, they might be able to do the operation or tell you but day-to-day care, there's nothing there. You might die before you get to the operation theatre. And the other one, if you're simply in a hospital full of nurses, then it might be okay on a day-to-day, but you just stay diseased for your whole life. So sometimes we just advise people practically, but there's no transcendental dimension. It's just helping them, blowing on the boil. And then there's sometimes we're just like the other option B hospital, where we just tell people like, okay, Krishna. But it's like, okay, I need to do something tomorrow morning when I get up to like make my mind peaceful. No, Krishna. So it requires some balance, isn't it? The practical and the transcendental. Okay, maybe last question.
The question was something in relation to the purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Interestingly, in the purport it is mentioned about opulences, material opulences. And Prabhupada mentions how for a devotee, even if there are so-called opulences, the devotee is not touched by material influence. And that's quite a powerful statement. And I was reminded of your lecture, Destroyed by Distractions, where you describe, I think there, how it is very difficult for a devotee. I mean, as devotees, we should be very careful because it can be difficult and we can be in this labh, pratishtha and all, get caught into that. But here it seems very simple. Prabhupada says that a devotee is beyond material influence. So how do we reconcile this? That there is a danger, but at the same time it's also okay.
Yeah, sometimes the danger of generally we feel the danger of material life very much in terms of the problems, the obstacles, the complexity. We don't also understand that the big danger of family life is the other side as well. The comfort, the opulence, the nice house with a nice garden and a villa by the sea. That's also just as dangerous. Srila Prabhupada said, Krishna tested me in two ways. First, he took everything away from me, and then later on he gave me everything. It's equally a test. It's equally a test because again, you can go off the road on both sides. So yes, Prabhupada makes it, as he always does, by his transcendental realization, sound effortless if you are fixed on your goal. And that's where being fixed on the goal is very, very important. So we don't sell out to the to that which may come on the journey, just the side benefits. I think in that lecture I gave the example of buying something in India. Like once I went to buy something in Loy Bazaar, so he said 30 chadars for the brahmacharis. So then, he gave the price, and then as you do as a foreigner, you just calculate it in your local currency. So and so rupees, so and so pounds. That's an amazing deal, I'll take it. And the person said, oh no, just relax. The devotee with me goes, the first price in India. That's just the start of the conversation. And then you all know what it means to buy in India. You have to go through the whole process. Nay, it's too much. Lower, brahmacharis. And then he goes lower, okay, lower. Then he comes lower to about half the price. And then you have to start walking out of the shop. No, it's too much, too high. And then you have to go out of the shop and he starts chasing you. And he says, no, you go lower. And then finally, when he's at about 1/8 of his original price, then you understand that's the real price. Okay, I'll take it. So spiritual life is something like that. As you go along, you get all these good offers. And in your mind, you calculate and you think, this is good. I should just take it. Take it and run. No, just wait. Be patient. Something better is coming. Don't sell out. And so a devotee, when they remain focused on the amazing thing that they're trying to get, pure love for Krishna, I won't settle for anything else. Because prema dhana vina vyartha daridra jivan dasa kori vetan mora deha prema dhan. Kaviraj Goswami says, prema dhana vina vyartha, if I'm devoid of pure love for Krishna, daridra jivan, I'm an impoverished soul. Nothing else will make me wealthy, nothing else will satisfy my heart, only love. So that's why it requires so much orientation and inspiration to understand what is my North Star, where am I going? Then we'll never be distracted. Okay, yes, last one.
So on the back of that, devotees are still based in the material world.
Devotees are still praised in the material world.
No, still based.
Oh, based.
So they're still in the material world. And so being in the material world, everything you do is still tinged with rajas and tamas, right? So even though you're trying your best to be in that sattva goodness mode, it's still tinged. So we were discussing this yesterday actually, and we were just saying, I was saying like it's still tinged, so you kind of, it feels like a bit of a short deal, isn't it really? You're trying all your life to do and be in the mode of goodness, but as much as you do, you're still going to be tinged because you're in this material world, so you're kind of like, it's out of your control.
Well, Srila Prabhupada does quote this verse, Mamchayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan. Sagunan means you go beyond. The moment you're in devotional service, you're beyond the modes. Srila Prabhupada gives the example that you could be in an ocean and it's full of waves. But if you're situated in the boat, then those waves don't affect you. So if you're situated in the boat of devotional service, then the waves don't affect you. So the point is that Krishna consciousness is a moment-to-moment process. It's like you have to rejoin the movement every morning. Because Maya is coming in all the gaps. In between retreats, Maya comes in. In between programs, Maya comes in. What to speak of that? In between mantras, Maya comes in. Wherever there's a gap, Maya comes in. Because Maya, equal opportunities employer. Everyone has equal opportunity. I used to work in the, before I became a monk, became brahmachari, and sorry, we was monk in outreach. I needed to get enough money to go to India, so I became a baggage handler at the airport. Those people that wreck your baggage. Sorry for that. I got my karma actually on the way here. They broke the bag, you know. It's like what goes around comes around. But one of the things I used to do is I used to do the air stairs. So you know those people that drive up the stairs to the plane. So once on an Air France flight, I was driving the air stairs onto the plane, and I just clipped the plane, just clipped it. And immediately the plane got grounded for 4 hours. Just because I had clipped it slightly. Because they had to bring the engineers in to check everything. Because once the plane is airborne, if there's even a slight gap in the metalwork, the air can come in and it can just destroy the whole thing. So therefore it's like so all the engineers had to come in. So it's like that. Maya is coming in. So yes, the modes are there. The modes are very difficult to overcome. But tado rajas tamo bhava kama lobhadayaschaye echeta etadanavidam stitam sattve prasidati. That the Bhagavatam is teaching us that as you engage more in devotional service, the nature's effects of the modes of passion and ignorance begin to decline. So we should see in our life that ignorance and passion should be declining. It still may be there, but in lower quantities and in lower frequencies. And like that, gradually we push it out. And then we realize that every moment I always have to embrace the mode of goodness. But yes, it's a world of material modes. Thank you so much, Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you.